Today on Locked On Canadiens, we're going to preview the Laval Rocket series. What are the keys to winning that series and making the Calder Cup final? And then we've got tons of mailbag questions from you, including some hypothetical trade proposals. We know you love that. Stay tuned because all that's coming up on today's Locked On Canadiens.
For Locked On Canadiens, your daily podcast on the Montreal Canadiens. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hi there, everyone, and welcome to episode 629 of Locked On Canadiens, your first listen of the day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts, as well as on YouTube. We're almost at that 1,000 subscriber mark, so please give us a subscription on YouTube as well. My name is Laura Saba, also known as The Active Stick, and if you are watching us, you will see that we are both wearing hoodies. My wonderful co-host, Scott Matlev, Habs Eyes on the Prize, is joining me. Scott, how are you doing today?
I have felt better. Little under the weather, just with the temperature swings. We've gone from 90 to 55 and back and forth. There is pollen everywhere, so my head is a little bit of a mess. So if I sound a little stuffed up or a little awful, it's just the way she goes sometimes. But it is almost the weekend. Hopefully, be back on my feet soon enough. We have a wedding out of town this weekend, so I am praying that this passes quickly like they usually do.
So it is Thursday, June 2nd right now, and if you are listening to us from Montreal, you will know that it is cold out, and it's very annoying. So those of you watching on YouTube, this is why we are both wearing hoodies. It's for whatever reason. It's insanely cold, and the allergies are really affecting us. Either way, today we have lots to talk about, including the Laval Rocket are about to start this weekend. They will be starting their series against the Seattle Thunderbirds. Actually, that's not true. They're starting it as we are recording, right?
No, game one is on Saturday the 4th.
In Springfield.
Yes.
Yes, so that's what I got. That's what I made the mistake, is because some of the people who cover the team are currently in Springfield, and I just got all confused. They're starting in Springfield, and it's one of those, it's 2-3-2 series.
Yep. So Saturday, June 4th, Sunday, June 5th are in Springfield at the Mass Mutual Center. Wednesday the 8th, Friday the 10th, the first two games at home at Place Belle. And then Saturday the 11th, if necessary, is at Place Belle. The 13th and 15th are in Springfield if necessary as well. So it doesn't go 2-2-1-1-1. It's 2-3-2 like you were saying, because the AHL has to be just different enough. So
well, I mean, it's a lot cheaper, right, for everybody involved, and that's part of it. So real quick, Scott, before we move on to our mailbag questions, what are, in your mind, the three keys for the Laval Rocket for their upcoming series against the Thunderbirds?
Goaltending is going to be a big thing. I know I said that in every series, and it's true so far. Caden Primo has been absolutely impressive, and in the upcoming series, Joel Hofer and former St. John Ice Caps legend Charlie Lindgren have been lights out for the Thunderbirds this year. It's a very good series to test the Rocket shooters, and just getting that consistent performance in. He doesn't have to be at 940 every game. If he continues to play at that 920, 930 pace there, which is still extremely impressive, the Rocket have every chance to win these games. And it's going to be interesting to see how the depth matches up here. I look at the defenses, and Springfield is a little bit bruisier, a little bit more defensive-minded, whereas the Rocket tend to lean a little bit heavier on the offensive side of things. Sammy Niku's a point per game. Xavier Ouellette's just below that in the playoffs here. And those defensive matchups are going to matter a lot, because if the Rocket can get offense from their defense, they're coming out ahead here. And then pairing with that, they got to win the depth battle, because Springfield's top six is very good. James Neal is not a first line. Yes, that James Neal is not a top line player in the AHL, but he's every bit still as lethal as he was in the NHL with where he's at. He doesn't have the speed he once did, but he doesn't really need that so much at the AHL level right now. they got to win those depth matchups, and getting some points from Raphael Harvey-Pinard, Jesse Alonen would be a big thing. And who's going to be this series is Donick Martel. He stepped up big against the Amherst. Can he do the same thing against the Thunderbirds? Or can someone like Cedric Paquette, Alex Belzile, a Joel Teasdale, Nate Schnarr kind of step into that role here? Because every series has had someone be the unexpected hero. Gabriel Bork against Syracuse, Donick Martel against Rochester. They got to find a new one for this because they can roll 4 lines, but you got to get production from that. Obviously, Joshua Waugh and Riley Kidney are waiting in the wings if JF Houle would opt for more offense somewhere in his lineup.
So we did get a mailbag question related to that. And I believe it was from Rock Smasha, if I'm not mistaken. So let's I know we normally go email, YouTube, then Twitter, but let's start with this Twitter question because it is directly related to what you just said.
Yeah, so it is from Rock Smasher. If you were Houle, what line would you make with Joshua Waugh and Riley Kidney, or would you keep them healthy scratched? Right now, there's not a lot of shame with just going Joshua Waugh, you were going to be on the 4th line and somewhere on power play 1 or 2, just because Schnarr and Teasdale do really well winning puck battles and getting pucks to the front of the net, where someone like a Lucas Condata or a Devontae Smith-Pelly in certain games doesn't have the finishing acumen that someone like Joshua Waz had at the QMJHL level. Riley Kidney's a little bit more, I'm not sure, just because I haven't watched as much of Kidney as I would have liked to this year. He's also a center. Their center depth has been very good so far, and you don't want to put him on the wing when he's used to playing center right now unless something has gone wrong there. So unless they opt to go with a 13-5 alignment instead of 12-6 or 11-7, I don't see Kidney getting in unless there's, of course, injuries and whatnot. I could see Waugh getting in, but the biggest thing for that is I could see that happening once they control the matchups. Once they get back to Place Bell and they have the benefit of last change and everything else, I think you might see one of them come in there because then JF Houle can kind of control the matchups that he wants for these young players, and they're not getting thrown to the wolves, at least not right away so far.
Right. And there was something that we were talking about in a previous episode this week is that you don't really want to mess with the winning lineup to start with, especially on the road. So I think that's how they'll go. I definitely agree with you there. And in the meantime, we've got tons more mailbag questions and a lot of fun coming up, including, are these trade proposals realistic, or are people just kind of trying to provoke us a little bit into talking about them? And we'll find out in just one moment. But first, betonline.net is your number one source for all your betting stats and sports info. Find all the latest sports developments, news, and odds, including this year's basketball championship matchup, the NHL Hockey Conference Finals, Major League Baseball, and of course, all the latest fighting news from MMA and UFC to boxing. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sports wagering information, including live betting, esports, and more. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and the action. BetOnline is where the game starts. And we also have an important favor to ask you. We've put together a survey so we can learn more about listeners like you and make your favorite Locked On podcasts even better. This is your opportunity to tell us what you like and what you don't like about Locked On Podcasts. Go to lockedonpodcast.com/survey right now to get started. It won't take very long, and everyone that completes the survey can qualify for a chance to win one of 10 100 Ticketmaster gift cards. To take our audience survey, go to lockedonpodcast.com/survey. And thank you so much for your help, and we really value that opinion. All right, so Scott, let's get into the mailbag questions. We've got a ton today.
We absolutely do. We'll dive right into the emails first, since those tend to be a little bit longer. And this one comes from Matthew, and it says, "Hey guys, looking at the OHL finals with Hamilton and Windsor, which is interesting with Habs prospect Jan Mysak and Arbor Jacki for Hamilton. Are there any thoughts on Daniil Sobolev, who is a 5th rounder that plays for Windsor and doesn't get talked about as one of our prospects? Also, Logan Morrison for Hamilton has gone undrafted but looks great. Is there any buzz surrounding his situation and a possible sneaky pickup for the Habs, who have obviously kept tabs on the Bulldogs? Cheers, Matthew." And it's funny that you mentioned an undrafted free agent playing for Hamilton, because I look at last year's rookie camp roster, and on that roster was Avery Hayes, who played with Jan Mysak and plays for the Bulldogs this year as well, who the Canadiens have at least some familiarity with. And I look at this and I'd go, that would be who I'm looking at. As for Sobolev, there isn't much to say because, one, I have not watched a lot of him, and he's not a standout in any one particular category here. He's there, he's often putting the puck in the right direction. He's not often a minus on the ice, but there isn't enough there for me to make like an actual educated explanation for him because, one, I have not had a chance to watch him enough. Hattie, who works for Eyes on the Prize, obviously is writing up OHL prospects and everything. I would recommend talking to him about that. He'll have seen more of him than I have at this point. And obviously Mysak and Jack Eye, everyone knows about at this point. They're all over Twitter anytime they do something. So it is going to be a very interesting final because Hamilton has just rolled straight through, and Windsor needed 7 games to defeat Flint Wednesday, to get there. I can't see Hamilton slowing down here, though, at least not right now.
A couple of things. We should have Hattie on the podcast for OHL Insight since we had Matt Drake on for QMJHL Insight. Definitely somebody to reach out for, and we'll try our best to make it happen. The other thing is that the Canadiens, because the owner of the Bulldogs is part owner of the Canadiens, right? A minority owner, whatever you want to call it, Michael Andlauer. Really nice guy, by the way. At least in person. I don't know too much about him, but anyway, he's obviously there's a connection there, right? Like the team definitely will have eyes and ears there. So it's definitely worth talking about with Hattie. What's the next question we've got?
I'm going to keep diving in. We do have a YouTube question, but I'm going to keep diving into the ones we got in the Locked On Canadiens email. This one comes from Bill Jones. How about the Canadiens swap their first overall pick for third for Arizona and trade Weber and Nylander? I'm assuming Norlinder is potentially who you might mean here. Unless the Canadiens are planning on acquiring William Nylander, in which case I'm not in favor of trading him to Arizona. For Arizona's first in 2023, I have one thing on that is that the Canadiens are going to have to be giving up much more to get Weber's contract off the books right now, because if they're desperate to get rid of that, their leverage is gone. And as we've seen in other trades in the past that were just essentially trading cap hits for nothing, this is one of those similar deals there that I think the Canadiens are going to have to give up a fair bit more than they would take in, at least in terms of trades there.
So a couple of things. Arizona, knowing that now that the Canadiens are no longer tanking, and they are still explicitly tanking and purposely tanking, would never give up their first rounder in 2023. 2, it's not just this person, but for whatever reason in the comments lately, I'm seeing a lot of people trading Norlinder, and I'm like, whoa, let's dial it all back. All of a sudden, everybody's throwing Norlinder into trades. Let's see how they do at the draft. Let's see who they accumulate. Let's see who they trade for over the course of the season, and let's keep Norlinder until there's really a reason to trade him. Is like for whatever reason, he seems to be like the second rounder that people throw in. When people throw in a second rounder to make a trade palatable, like now it's like, let's throw in Norlinder to make a trade. We're not doing that. We're gonna calm down. We're gonna let Kent Hughes do his thing, and then we can start speculating on that. Next question.
And we have one from Neil, also centering kind of around the Arizona Coyotes. Hi, big fan of the show. Keep up the great work. We will do our best. I had a bit of a backseat GM trade proposal at the draft for the Arizona Coyotes picks and others that are subject to change because I am not a GM after all. And there's a lot here, so give me some time to breathlessly read my way through this. Yoel Armia and Paul Byron or Mike Hoffman, plus a pair of third rounders, 2022 and 2023, for Lawson Krause sign and trade agreement, could dump some cap to Arizona so they could reach the salary floor, give them a young vet in Armia and players who would be able to produce in smaller markets. I'd expect Krause to have a contract similar to Dvorak, meaning Montreal could still dump up to around $4 million in cap space while getting rid of either Byron or Hoffman. Krause is a 6'4", 24-year-old left winger who scored 20 goals on a struggling Coyotes team this year. Around St. Louis' coaching staff, Montreal could try to shape and become the best version of Josh Anderson and Yoel Armia in one player. And there's a second proposal. The Habs would trade Shea Weber, Calgary's first in the draft this year, as well as Florida's first next year, Jesse Alonen and the remainder of Byron or Hoffman from the previous trade for Jacob Chikrin and a couple of mid to late round draft picks. Ideally, the Yotes settle for a lower tier prospect that we don't know as much about, such as Emil Heineken, Ty Smolanic, or Oliver Kapanen. Chikrin is locked in for $4.5 million for another 3 years, and the Habs rebuild instantly gets ahead by 1 to 2 years. I may be delusional, but I'd love to hear what you guys say about it on the show. Thank you, Neil. There's a lot going there. I do love the idea of Lawson Krause. I do. It's just a matter of, does he fit the timeline of the Canadiens right now? Which is hard to say because it's, quite frankly, it's a
big unknown. Rebuild. It's a huge question mark.
Exactly. We don't know, okay, is St. Louis going to come in and this team's suddenly going to be better overall, that the rebuild is ahead of where it was? Or are there still kinks and bugs to work out that continually adding new pieces messes with the flow and synergy of that? I like the idea of it, but I am not 100% certain if that's the route they're going to go. When it comes to trading with Arizona, I feel like it's going to be Shea Weber and whatever, other contract needs to go that way or picks go that way. And that's just it. Or it might be a nothing player that goes to the AHL. Simple as that. Like, I can't see it being anything truly big, at least not right now.
I think Arizona's in this position now where with the Chychrun one, with the second proposal, I think that Arizona is going to want a king's ransom because the Habs are not going to be the only person looking at him, especially given the term on his contract, especially given what kind of a player he is. I think a lot of people are going to come knocking. In fact, I know that on Locked On Leafs, they did some trade proposals involving Chychrun because he's definitely somebody that everybody has an eye on. So you can check out their last episode as well. There were multiple players that they discussed, but Chychrun was one of them. I think when it's somebody that coveted, Arizona is going to want a lot of things, including picks. I'm very hesitant, to be honest. A lot of people are talking about that Florida next year's pick. I'm very hesitant to trade that away just yet until I see how Florida's offseason goes, because they are in a massive cap crunch and they have given away a lot of picks. They have 2 picks. They have 2 picks in the entire draft or something or is it something like 2 picks in I don't know how many. Anyway, Florida's in a position right now where they're going to be struggling next year in terms of cap team construction, roster construction. So let's wait and see how they do there. And then maybe think about trading their pick or maybe try and exploit that a little bit and give them other picks because the Canadiens have tons. All right, sorry. We are going to move on to all our Twitter questions. And that's coming up in just one moment. All right. Scott, what have we got from the Twitter questions?
I'm going to stick with the prospect side of things for right now. This one comes from Randy Hansen. The Memorial Cup this year looks to potentially be a great one for the Canadiens. Hamilton and Edmonton, where Caden Gooley is, look almost unbeatable in their league playoffs. Which team do you hope to see most? Honestly, watching Hamilton has been very exciting this year just because they've got also Mason McTavish. They've got some guys that I think the Canadiens might take a flyer on for the AHL next year, like a Nathan Staios, the Avery Hayes, a Logan Morrison in there. And there's obviously, ground to be made up there. And I think Edmonton, Caden Gooley's kind of fallen off my viewing radar a little bit just because the AHL has been so important. And I think him making a big, deep run is very reminiscent to what Cale Fleury did a couple of years ago when I believe he got traded out of, I want to say it was Kelowna, but I might be wrong, and was playing for the Regina Pats when they were in the Memorial Cup. And I think this is going to be a big opportunity for him. So those are the 2 teams right now that I'm keeping an eye on. Obviously, Shane Wright's not playing deep in the draft there, or because Kingston was eliminated, but you can't control players that aren't on your team right now anyways.
Yeah, but I also really am excited to watch a little bit more of Gooley. We definitely we don't talk enough about him. We definitely we bring him up whenever we want to talk about, their most promising prospects, but I'm excited to see some games with him in there. It's definitely, I think he's going to take the next step next year, or in the coming season. So it'll be good to watch him in the OHL playoffs. Also in the Memorial Cup, not OHL, in the Memorial Cup.
Uh,
Oh my God.
Also from Randy Hansen, is it finally time for the NHL to join the 21st century and have legitimate people running the rules reviews? There must be dozens of rules on the books that should be purged at this point.
All right. Officiating is honestly, it's a mess, but partly the NHL rulebook is to blame. And I absolutely agree. I actually was thinking about having scouting the refs on, and we can talk refs and stuff with him at some point in the future. But I definitely think that there needs to be an impartial, not 200 hockey men led review of the NHL rulebook, and I think it's gonna be a while because right now most of the GMs are hockey men, and most of the most of the people involved are hockey men, so it's gonna take quite a while.
I look at it too and I go, just clarify what the hell's going on at this point. Like, if I can't tell you what offsides is or offside or whatever, how are you going to explain it to someone who's trying to get into the sport here? Like, I cannot explain to somebody what this rule is, even watching, because I don't know. I don't know what a kicking motion is. I don't know what goaltender interference is.
All of those
Clarify.
things seem so straightforward, though. They like you would think that offside is super straightforward, but then you got to get like a measuring stick, you got to get like an invisible cloak, you got to like cast an incantation and to figure out like if the player was actually offside, or like a distinct kicking motion. I thought a distinct kicking motion meant kicking the puck into the net. It could be anything.
It's such a mess. Like, how, like, yeah, a kicking motion is you bring your foot back in a kicking motion. What Blake Coleman did is not a kicking motion. I don't know whether Cal McCarr was offside or onside. I really don't, because I don't know what the rule is. I don't know what goalie. Simplify and clarify. It's not that difficult. Please write like a hard and fast rule with pictures of the example and go, this is the standard. If you can't do that, then get someone who will. We have a YouTube question that I actually missed in our last segment from Victor Maxwell. Friday mailbag. Can Montreal trade for the second pick or even Ottawa's seventh pick? Also, even I think Slavkovsky will go 2 or 3 overall. How can the Canadiens get the first and second and not lose their promising prospects of 2023 first-round picks? Who would you pick if the Habs had the first and second overall picks? And my first thing is, with all of this, they cannot get up to second overall without having to give up a good chunk, including likely this year's first, probably their early second, and potentially a prospect, because there's a chart that shows the values of things and you got to add everything up, and you're basically combining everything to make a cake that is the second overall pick. And to be quite honest, if I had the second overall pick, I'd probably pick Slavkovsky, or I'd pick David Jiricek right now for help on defense. There's plenty of options, mind you. Trading up for seventh, I can see potentially a little bit more. But second overall, I can't see the Canadiens doing that right now. It's going to cost too much. And if you're a rebuilding team, you can't afford to just sacrifice assets, at least not without good cause behind it.
There's a decent discussion on the YouTube. I think it was 2 episodes ago. And somebody was like, realistically, the Canadiens could probably move up to like this, the 11, 12, 13 mark, a lot higher than they would be able to move into the top 10. So if somebody falls out of the top 10 that they had their eye on, then yeah, it's worth shopping whatever you've got. But at the same time, I don't think that the Canadiens will be able to get this year's second or third. I just don't think those teams would be willing to trade them. And so therefore, I just think, like when you have the first overall pick, you don't need to make trades, right? It's only if you want 1 and 2. And I believe the last time that was done was it the Kane, or was it that was 2 and 3. Was it the Sedins? It was the Sedins, right? How do you do that? How do you orchestrate that in 2022?
You find a very stupid GM, which, it's the Devils. It could be hit or miss. It's who knows, but I don't see a team with the money invested in analytics department going, yeah, we'll trade to the second overall pick without taking Montreal to the cleaners at that point in time. It is a pipe dream, one that I think would be hilarious and fun, but you're going to sacrifice something at some point. And unfortunately, I don't think the Canadiens are in a spot for that. So diving back into the rest of the Twitter questions, this one comes from Ryan Lee. Probably a question for Scott, since he wrote the article for Eyes on the Prize. If he's available at 26th or 33rd, would you pick Ivan Miroshi Nachenko? And my answer is absolutely, without even thinking about it. There was a report that the Canadiens would not draft anyone from Russia. Kent Hughes debunked that in his press conference. We forgot to talk about that yesterday. Miroshi Nachenko was seen as a top 10 talent. Unfortunately, he was diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma, will miss the rest of this year as he recovers and undergoes treatment, but it is very treatable. And I watched his highlight clips. He's got talent, and if he comes back just as strong as he was before, I would run up to the podium if he was there 26th overall, because the Canadiens can wait for him to be ready.
Yeah,
Other
absolutely.
teams can't.
They have tons of time, right? They have tons of time, and also there's a good chance that will make him drop, right? Like in the eyes of some teams, 26th and 33rd. Like you've got those two picks that are right around where he's expected to be picked. So you can go for it.
This one comes from our good friend Ian of the Build podcast. I was playing NHL 06 recently and thought to myself that Francis Bouillon must have had connections at EA Sports because they made him the fastest man alive. If you worked at EA, which player's stats would you unrealistically boost and why?
Cole Caulfield for the haters.
I look at this and I would turn Cole Caulfield's like physicality stat up to like Zdeno Chara level. So you have this tiny little like water bug. And when you hit someone, it just levels them regardless of how big they are. And I think that would be hysterical.
Like Ant-Man.
Exactly. Like Francis Bouillon being the fastest man alive, Cole Caulfield being the most physical player in the game, I think to me is absolutely hilarious. So that would be it. In other games, I always make like someone I hate really slow and really bad at what they do, and then turn the settings down to easy and just beat up on them for a little bit because I'm a bad person. Let's see here. We have another question from Randy Hansen. The Sea Dogs fired their coach after losing in the first round despite being the host for the Memorial Cup. What other shocking firing do you remember best?
You know what? I keep thinking about this, and I don't know if it was specific to hockey or if it was just in general. There's some boneheaded firings that have happened for sure. What is the most shocking one that you would think?
I remember it was the day Claude Julien got hired because I was taking a nap at home, and one of our writers at the time posted in the chat from NHL.com that Michel Therrien had been fired and Claude Julien had been hired to replace him. And Marc Dumont, who was the managing editor at the time, looked at that and went, haha, how old is that article? Before realizing the date stamp on the article, went, oh crap, they actually did this thing right now. We have a screenshot of it saved somewhere. It's one of the funniest reactions to something I've ever seen because it could very easily have been from like 8 years prior or however many years prior it was when they had fired Michel Therrien and hired Claude Julien
and replaced him with Claude Julien the last time. You know what? I just thought about one this year. Barry Trotz getting fired. Obviously the on-ice results in one season were bad, but like they were overachieving for the 2 years prior to that. And you literally fired a Stanley Cup winning coach, a team that was constantly missing the mark and it was constructed so well that they were expected to be like a dynasty, couldn't make it until Barry Trotz became their coach. And then he like had the Islanders overachieving 2 years in a row. And then he got fired because the Islanders didn't make the playoffs. And that was pretty shocking this year alone. I'm trying to think, like, there's gotta be football ones that are crazy. And
in terms of stuff for like European football, soccer, like we could spend days talking about like insane firings and everything, and we would still barely scratch the surface just because that's the way the sport is. I will open the floor to this for other people if they want to answer this in our comments or replies, though. And we have one final question. This weird one does not come from Will for once. This one comes from Tristan.
Oh, we have a question from Will. Did I forget to send that one to you?
You did, which is just such a shame that we forgot.
That's okay. I will send it to you, but let's do this weird one too.
If toilets became sentient, would you rather they passionately crave poop, be ambivalent towards it, or deeply resent you for it?
Well, like the toilets are there to serve a function, right? Like it's not like it's not the toilet's fault, it's a toilet. So I would hope that it enjoys the excrement.
I don't want a toilet to be like yum yum poopy. Like that's weird to me. It just like do your thing and like be
just
normal.
Exist.
Just exist to take poop. That's it. If you're resentful, I'm worried that I'm gonna go sit down and you're just gonna like one of my childhood nightmares, like being eaten by a sentient toilet. So like, but ambivalent would be my guess, because if you swing to one extreme or the other, it gets very, very weird and uncomfortable.
So I sent you the final question.
Why is it not popping up? Do you just want to read it to me?
Yes. Which golf club would be most effective as a tool if you were stranded on a desert island? Now, I looked up types of golf club because I don't know.
I feel like a driver is useful if you're like trying to hammer things down and break things. But I look at irons and wedges as like a tool to actually like help chop down trees and other stuff. And I kind of lean towards that a little bit. So I'm going to go with like a 7-iron, because you can use it to still hammer things down. It's got the strength in that, but you can use it to wedge. It's got the angle that if you want to try and spark a fire with the sunlight, something like that, I think would be my what I would take.
Okay, so I looked up types of golf clubs, and it says putters, woods, hybrids, wedges, and irons. And irons just seems like it makes sense based on everything you said, because putters looks like it's not really gonna. It can hammer things, but that's pretty much it, right?
Yeah.
What is the one that's most frequently used in murders? Like that's the one that I would take.
I'm pretty sure like an iron or something, because they're easy to swing, but they're heavy enough at the head that it has an impact. No one uses a driver because it's very heavy at one end and it can snap in the middle a little bit easier. So usually, like if you're getting murdered, you're getting hit to beat to death with like an iron of some kind.
Okay, well that's the one I'm going with. And that has been a very bizarre mailbag today. So Locked On Hoodies will sign off for this week. And we will be back on Monday with lots to talk about, including the Laval Rocket. There's some questions that have been brought up that I said that we would discuss on Monday's show in our YouTube comments. And I just want to say to all our listeners, thank you for keeping those topic ideas coming. If there's any guests or anything that we can think of to bring on, we will do so because of your questions. In the meantime, you can subscribe to this podcast on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. You can find us on Twitter at LO_Canadians. You can email us at lockedoncanadians@gmail.com. If you want to find Scott on Twitter, he's at Scott Matla. If you want to find me, I am at The Active Stick. Don't forget that listener survey and check out Locked On NHL as your second listen of the day.